Hi, this is Turnbulls. We're talking surface mould ripened cheeses. Now, surface mould ripened cheeses are the white ones, what we classically know as the bries, the camemberts, those kind of thing. Now, when we think of surface mould, the white carpet is definitely the most common. It is easy to use. It is very, very practical. It is robust and it gets everywhere. The original use of this is the Brie de Meaux. The Brie de Meaux was the people who we have in history as being the people who first tried this. And that it dates back, we're talking 1,000 years, really until the 1700s. So it's a relatively newcomer. Apparently an abbot from the Brie area was staying with a lady with a household in Camembert, and a cheesemaker called Mary Hallel was talking to him, and he told her about it, and together they developed the Camembert we have today. That's a good example of what we see all over the world. These cheeses, this technology spreading like wildfire. And Camembert and Brie are extremely common from Switzerland to the UK to the Americas. Anywhere where there is a chance, they'll give it a go. It's a good cheese to work with. So what is it? Well, let's get cheese cam up here. Right, so as we can see from this picture, it's a white mold. This one is a little bit aged, so it's beginning to, we're beginning to see some age on the right. Initially, this would have been white like button mushroom. Now that, as it gets older, the rubbing of the cheese against whatever paper it's in and all the dyeing back of the mold will reduce that mold from a white, fluffy button mushroom robust skin to a thinner, not quite fragile, but still much thinner than it would be. And then it breaks down even more and becomes a little bit grayer and moves to the point where it begins to lift and crack around the edges. So the mold blooms up, begins to break down the curd inside it, adjacent to the mold. And then as it dies back, the paste becomes to full ripening. Now, a key learning from this is what I think of as that sort of orangey, browny color, which you get on some bries and some camemberts. Those are indications of really good condition. That kind of oranginess is the best bries will display that. Now, is brie and camembert, those things, protected around the world? No, they're not. So the use of this word is in bries and camemberts made just about everywhere. Now, there are lots of different types of ones. There's chaus, there's goat's logs, which you see in a lot of vegetarian type or salad type environments, which has the same white on the other. Now, a key thing with white molds is it only reaches about 1.5 centimeters to 2 centimeters into the cheese. Now, this one, let's bring this back and get me up. That one, you can see it actually has gone all the way through. I don't know if you can see that. Let's give it a bit of a squeeze. Nice, that's great. But with a lot of cheeses, you'll see a firmer section in the center. That might have small holes in it. And even though it's not the crumbly that the cheese would have been in the first instance, it still can be a sort of an intermediary phase, difficult to spot. If you see it with full crumbliness, that cheese is not ripe. It's not going to display the taste notes that you're looking for. So what are those taste notes? Well, one of the key characteristics of mold ripened cheeses, they develop the acidic and possibly slightly sweeter curd, drier curd, and it becomes more savory. So we look to see a high umami in these cheeses. There will also be moderate salt, but the sweetness will drop down and the acid will drop right down as well. So a ripe cheese using mold ripened cheese is going to see a higher umami, moderate salt, but low acid and low sweet. In bitterness terms, that is a cheese by cheese kind of thing. So some cheeses will see significant bitterness coming from the rind or in fact the curd, depending on the stage of the cheese. Other cheeses will see no bitterness at all. And most people prefer not to see bitterness in these cheeses, but for some, particularly British cheeses actually of a Camembert style, it is common. In the dairy flavors, we're looking through the butter and then cream. It's a kind of savory cream. Butter and cream is in those dairy flavors. The flavors of the paste itself, the other flavors, we begin to get a much greater diversity than we ever saw in the fresh cheeses. Alliums, brassicas, wet leaves, wet wood, rubber ammonia, farmyard, silage, fermented cabbage, fresh cabbage, mushrooms, earthies, all sorts of things going on. We will see that bries and camemberts diverge in this. Bries pick up a lot of more woodlandy kind of flavors, the leaves and the woodland mushrooms, and camemberts go down what you think the allotment flavors, the brassicas, the cabbages, the onions, those kind of things. And that's characteristic of those cheeses. But outside that, use of white mold has no character beyond what the cheesemaker chooses to imbibe. So there's a lot of variety out there. And we must respect that fact that variety is intrinsic to this cheese. So we've talked about the fact that these molds will develop, the paste will follow. We'll see that white bloom at the beginning with the crumbly, kind of cracked sort of inside, going all the way to the other end where the cheese has lost its structural integrity. It becomes floppy. The rind might become a bit wet, a bit grayish, strong smell of ammonia, showing that the flavors have really peaked and possibly gone past, and the texture inside is pungent. It's pungent. You're looking for the right point in the middle. Now, with most of these cheeses, we're looking around the sort of 35 to 50 day mark, depending on the treatment of the cheese during its maturation. Now, that surface mold with using the white mold, also known as Penicillium candidum, also known as Penicillium camemberti. They use both names. I like Penicillium camemberti because it reminds me of camembert, therefore it's easy to remember. But it's the same as candidum. But there are other rinds. The most sort of, let's call them the oldest, is the Geotrichum. It has a vermiculated rind. There are pictures on the website. And that is typical with goat's cheeses. Sometimes it's grayed out with ash. Penicillium roqueforti, normally used on the insides of blue cheeses, is also quite a funky thing to put on the outside. Gets a really good bake down and then has a blue color. But another really common one of what natural rinds is where they put the cheese in a cellar and whatever grows, grows. Almost always it's a gray color, sometimes gray to brown with a little silveryness to it. And it'll be a composite of lots of different yeasts and molds that are all kicking off, and each cellar will have their own blend. Now, there are cheeses where they have chosen specific molds, specific monocultures to blend the cheeses they want to. My favorite example of this is the Montagnolo from the Casserai Champignon, which has done very well in competition and is a very robust, soft mold outside, but also blue inside. So there are variations in there, but the most common, as discussed, is the Penicillium camemberti, the white mold, which we'll be tasting next.